Welcome back, you filthy exiles, again for today. So there was a interview with the Korean Path of Exile YouTube channel that just took place today, and there was a ton of information that came out of that, and in good fashion, I'm going to summarize that for you so you can have a quick 10-minute video or 12-minute video to break that down. Anyway, let's get into it. And if you haven't subbed to the channel already, make sure you sub to the channel, and let's have a chat down in the comments about what we discussed in this video. Okay, so the first thing that was discussed in the interview was around server stability. So they are very well aware of server stability, and it is a topic that is keeping them up at night. And there's definitely a lot more anticipated players, or a lot more players than what was originally anticipated. So hopefully they are cognizant enough to know that they're upscaling enough to be able to meet the amount of players that they may have a demand of. In fact, Jonathan made the comment that it's an unprecedented amount of players that they're expecting now, and so they are scaling up server infrastructure to be able to meet that demand. The next question that was asked was whether or not PoE2 was meeting their vision, and at this stage, it's about 90% of the way there, or the way that it should look. So there's a little bit of room to go beyond that, and then obviously the vision will likely change over time. But overall, PoE2 is definitely meeting the expectations of the developers right now. They also made a comment and said that the only real ARPG that they need to compete with, that they consider the next ARPG of any substance, is Path of Exile 1, which I found pretty amusing, and I think we all know why that's amusing at this stage. The next big news drop here was Mirror of Calandra has been confirmed as it will be a drop in Path of Exile 2 moving forwards, same as it was in Path of Exile 1, so you will be able to farm it. However, same deal is it's going to be extremely hard to get, and it's going to be a very rare item. In relation to the crafting system, Jonathan also mentioned that while the system currently is very simple, that's by design, and that's meant to entice newer players in, and also to be a much more simple baseline to craft with, but this system will be extrapolated and elaborated upon time as expansions and new content is added into the game. He was also queried around whether or not there would be reconsideration around having only just one life on pinnacle boss fights, and the comment from Jonathan was that this content is designed for good players of the game and should equally be rewarding and difficult for those players, so it's really the case of you'll have to work up to be able to beat it. Melee skills were also questioned in the interview, and the response from Jonathan was that they are going to be incredibly strong and they will pay off for players who want to play melee. He further elaborated that a lot of bosses in the close range fight are actually easier to play with melee because it's a lot easier to dodge their attacks. In a lot of instances, a lot of the boss design has attacks that have a sweeping motion, and so the further away you are from that motion, it's going to actually be more difficult for range characters to overcome. So theoretically, melee players have a bit of a leg up advantage when it comes to close range combat in Path of Exile 2 because of the way the bosses have been put together. As far as the market in Path of Exile, he was pretty adamant as well that they have a very free market approach, and that's a policy that they stand by, and they have a very strict policy that they do not like binding items to characters in-game. Another question that was asked was around specialized weapons, and this was also confirmed that there would be weapons that are very unique and specialized in the game that you would have to consider and make concessions of as to how to make the build work. So basically, there are things in Path of Exile 2 that are very weapon locked and that you would need to totally tailor your approach to build with. I actually really like these types of builds personally. I think they're fun and they're unique, and who knows what will come of them. But yeah, Path of Exile 2 is stacking up to be a game where, yeah, you could play the standard skills, but here's some cool weapon skills and have at. The question was also asked around whether or not Headhunter and Mageblood would be in the EA. They did confirm there would be a number of uniques that have been adapted to Path of Exile 2 that'll be returning. Currently, because of the flask system changes, they have not put Mageblood in the early access, and at this stage they haven't confirmed whether or not it's going to be coming back because of those system changes, but it'll probably likely come back in some form or another. At this stage, though, there's tons of uniques that we can look forward to that we'll be able to remember from the original game that will likely be significantly better and or totally different. He also made a comment to say that because of the way that Path of Exile 2 works and the mechanical changes at a baseline level, uniques are going to be a lot more interesting in the way that they interact with the player and with the game itself. It was also confirmed with a question around underused skills and would they be balancing them, and this has just been a trend with Path of Exile in the past. So Jonathan actually said that as devs, they do look at the third-party websites and they have a look specifically for the skills that aren't utilized as much by the player base. And on that basis, that's how they select whether or not that skill needs to be buffed to try and bring it back into a bit of a meta scenario. And so this will be the approach that's applied in Path of Exile 2 as well as it was applied in Path of Exile 1. Now, the big conversation topic was raised in the interview around third-party tools. So basically, they have tried to add in things that compensate for this in elements of it. So there are advanced skill information windows that now show more information about skills, such as minion skills, and also the component breakdowns of skills where there's multiple parts to skills. They also have adjustments, or they have information shown on the skill tree. When you tick a node in the skill tree, for example, it will actually tell you what the effect is on your character. So overall, they've tried to provide a lot more information within the client themselves. Where they sort of draw the line is with path of building, and this is where path of building sort of takes over. So Jonathan more or less said that they don't really agree with the idea of mix and matching items that you don't currently have, and theory crafting into a build because they want you to experience the journey. So they said things like POB will still be a thing and still be needed in Path of Exile 2 for those of us like myself who like to theory craft and create builds. That's basically just their stance, and they're probably never really going to change on that. Though I did see in another interview where they did make a comment about considering whether or not they would add a build planner into the game. So it's very likely they're sort of just a bit flip-floppy around this right now, and this will firm up over time as Path of Exile sort of gets released and the community develops around it. Another question was asked around the dot cap being 30 million in Path of Exile 1, and they've confirmed in Path of Exile 2 they didn't really see there to be a need for it to be capped in this time around. The reason for the dot cap in Path of Exile 1 was because of technical limitation in the way that Path of Exile 1 was designed, but he wasn't sure about the response to this, but did note that he didn't really see there to be a necessitation for why this would be in Path of Exile 2, so it's very likely dot cap won't be capped, but that's a tentative right now. Now, he also spoke about mounts. At this stage, there's only going to be one mount. It'll be for the Ranger predominantly and the Rower, and it's totally designed to increase mobility. And essentially, he said that it was going to be quite an OP skill and they need to keep an eye on it. He did also note that potentially down the track, he wouldn't mind making mounts for melee characters as opposed to range characters, but that's just something that's in the pipeline to consider for later down the track and currently not something that they've got in design right now. In relation to guilds, so Jonathan confirmed that due to some back-end technical issues, they can't merge guilds over from Path of Exile 1 to Path of Exile 2, so we'll need to recreate our guilds in Path of Exile 2. They didn't really ask about whether or not your guild stashes and things like that would cover over, so that's a question mark right now, and we don't really have any information. They also spoke about whether or not there would be guild challenges, and Jonathan was against that because he believes, and this is the ethos of GGG, that all content should be able to be completed by the individual solo player, and putting in guild-specific content would actually put a limiter on what individual players could actually achieve without being in a guild. Anyway, that's all the information I've got for you today. It was a really interesting interview. There were some good questions, and we did learn some more stuff out of it. The most important thing, mirrors are back, and we're going to have to remake the Filthy Exile guild in Path of Exile 2 now. Anyway, if you like this content, don't forget to like and sub to the channel, follow the Twitch, follow the X. That's what's called now. The Patreon's there too in the description below, and I will see you guys next time.